tuning in to the online broadcast network, AFTERBUZZ TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your number one source for after-show entertainment. AFTERBUZZ TV, the destination for TV superfans. Producing aftershows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows, interviewing celebrities and showrunners, and bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Listen, Derrial Nando, this is how it's going to be. You have to fight to survive. You have to fight to survive.
Do you have a crush on one of us?
I want you to try.
Do you have a crush on one of us? Is that why you're acting this way?
This just got really weird.
Got really weird.
Yes, I do.
Oh, God.
All right, guys. Welcome to...
right?
well, obviously. Welcome to the Walking Dead After Show. Once again, I'm Dave Klein, and I'm joined here by Derrial Christon.
What's up, everybody? How you doing?
And Nando Velasquez.
What's up?
We're not joined by Joyce.
No, Joyce tried to be here.
She didn't fight.
She didn't win the fight with the zombie walkers.
For those of you who don't get why I'm doing that, try is the name of the episode. So let's move on to go ahead and talk about the intro of the episode, which is going to set the mood for the entirety of it, which is that we have kind of what we predicted and talked about last week, which was that Nicholas and Glenn have come back, and Nicholas lied through his teeth that about what happened to a certain Deanna's son. So definitely a lot of tensions there. Deanna really upset. But let's go ahead and first start and talk about Nicholas and Glenn and the whole situation going on with them, and Glenn being a badass the whole time. So first we get the juxtaposition of their tapes where you see each point of view. And at the end of the day, it's going to be who you trust. I mean, unless you're really good at reading people and telling that Nicholas is lying, it is just a he said, she said type of thing. Mm-hmm. And we as an audience obviously know, but if you're just listening to the two stories, it's just going to come down to who do you trust, who do you believe.
Well, we see Nicholas talking in that video confessional that Deanna was recording, and we saw that mixed in with Glenn's account to Rick. It's kind of like those new commercials with Verizon.
It is very similar.
It's kind of like that, which I thought was kind of funny. But so we see that interaction, and you know, well, I think we shouldn't gloss over also the fact that when we first see Deanna and the family, they're obviously in mourning, and you could tell that Deanna, based on Gabriel last week, is not in a trusting mood because she burned Carol's casserole card.
Yeah, well, I was gonna get to that part after talking about it, but that's all good. That's all good.
You're skipping Nando.
I'm going all over the place, but I just thought it was important to get her mind, because obviously I think she's believing Nicholas, or she doesn't know. She says she doesn't know. You don't know what I know.
She doesn't know what to believe, I think.
Yeah.
Right. She's like, I'm like God. I see everything. Yeah, but she does ask a good question. She does find, as upset as she obviously is, she does find the hole in Nicholas's story, which is, so why did you come back with Glenn and everyone if you're saying they did everything that they did and the lie that Nicholas had come up with? So she still does have the sense to ask the real question, and we never get a response, so we don't know what Nicholas says or what he comes up with for that lie. But she is still poking for holes and things like that when you get that he said, she said situation.
And my favorite part actually of that entire scene was Glenn telling Nicholas, people like you are supposed to be dead. And I loved his expression, and it's just his face, and it was like he was hardcore. You know what I mean? Like, that's where we really saw Glenn at like his leadership and who he is. You know what I mean? He didn't flinch. You know what I mean? He was ready to take Nicholas down, and I love that scene in this particular episode.
Glenn was awesome in that scene. What I loved about it too was, I'm not threatening you, I'm saving your life. I think his come from, and this comes into his conversation with Rick when he told Rick his story about Noah trying to make things work out, and Glenn really wants to kind of take. I mean, we've seen Glenn kind of already take up Herschel and Dale, and kind of move, toward a leader, but also the joke always is he's kind of becoming the moral compass, and it's like, oh no, that's a bad thing. But we definitely see that when people die, it's almost like Glenn takes a part of them with him, and the lessons that person, the reason why that person was so detrimental to the group, so important to the group. And I think with Noah, it was, I want to fit in here. This is where we belong now. We are, and Glenn says, we are them.
Yeah, so basically, if Noah hadn't died, he'd be on Rick's side and be like, yeah, I don't know about this place.
No,
I'm joking.
you're joking.
Because,
okay.
No, because it was you were saying that Noah died, so he took that with him because that was Noah's big thing. But
I think but I do say I can't remember what I was going to say right. It's like just Glenn's conversation. I know who you are. The one thing that I thought was weird about Nicholas is such a wimp. Obviously, he's scared and frightened, but he's so willing to fight. And I get not wanting to be guilty to Deanna because I guess she would exile him, maybe being scared. But
he would be exiled.
But here's Rick.
He was leaving people from his team.
But he'd be exiled, I would guess. I think if Deanna found him guilty, she'd exile him. But here he is standing up to Glenn like, you don't tell me not to leave the walls. You can't tell me that. And I'm like, dude, he really is saving you because you're a wimp, and when you walk out with people, the second you're in danger, you bail on them.
Yeah, no, Glenn has the exact right point, and I thought it was a great comeback, but B, it's absolutely true. He is literally saving not only Nicholas but other people's lives by saying what he was saying and stepping up the way that he was. But yeah, Nicholas is just he's just in that cowardly persona of not only just being a coward, but which Eugene was. Eugene was the coward of afraid because he was just afraid, but this is someone who's afraid but still will take other people down with him, essentially. Yeah. So it's like a type A persona coward, whereas Eugene would be a type B coward, I suppose, if you're going like A type and B type for personalities. So yeah,
and I think Deanna is in a weird predicament right now because she obviously she sees something in Rick and his team and his group and what they're bringing to what she doesn't feel is the structure of already the group that they have. But then now these obstacles are taking place where obviously she's lost her son, they've lost Noah, and she has to look at this in more of a diplomatic, quote unquote, politician way of viewing things. And I think it's interesting in the fact that I was actually happy that she still was diplomatic in the sense of with Nicholas. I thought she was just going to side with whatever he said. You know what I mean? But she kind of let him know. To me, her statement was saying, "I'm still looking into both sides." You know what I mean? So I was happy with that because I thought initially she would just side completely with Nicholas.
It's something interesting about that too. It just hit me now, but we could save it for later when we talk about Jesse. But I feel like it's a very something that Rick said about wishing instead of taking action. Yeah. Like, I almost feel like Deanna is stuck in bureaucracy so much. That even in this case, it's kind of like, even with her doubts, she doesn't know what to do. She's kind of like locked into maybe it'll go away or maybe it'll figure itself out.
Yeah, she's scared to rattle what they already have established. Yeah. You know what I mean? But she knows deep down inside what's right.
Yeah,
absolutely. And then, so going back to what you talked about a little bit earlier, for her bureaucracy world and where she's at and her family, what they're going through, we have the whole intro is kind of about them and her rejecting the casserole and again really just not working. Yeah, but it's more like a personal thing for her as opposed to again actually taking action and then it really is that trust of what Gabriel brought up and really bringing doubts to her mind. But again,
and we can't forget them just tuning out to 9 Inch Nails.
Yeah.
Love that. Yeah.
The name of that song was Somewhat Damaged.
So impressed with all you do. Tried so hard to be like you. I love those lyrics,
Yeah. That was crazy. I loved it. We don't really hear modern, especially at the top of a show like that, we usually don't hear like a montage or any like modern music that much. There are cases, trust me. I know people will remind me.
I feel like they've been doing it more this second half, though, of the season. They've been playing more music that's deliberate to what the scene is setting up.
So confirmed, all the Walking Dead happenings take place after 9 Inch Nails. Confirmed, if anyone was wondering.
So, confirmed.
Where in the timeline it was? Or
for somewhat. We're in a little bit of a timeline. Not that okay. It's just somewhat modern times. But so she's still, but what I was saying about the whole bureaucracy thing is even though she's very much not trusting the group and that's going to play into her decisions, she still hasn't stepped up and done anything per se to change anything. It's still like, okay, let me think on this, let me sit on this, let me try and figure out the best course of action. Yeah, and it's that difference again with her style of leadership with Rick's, whereas Rick is, I want to take immediate action, and her style is, let me sit and think and find the best course of action according to her, but which might be a little bit too long. And I think that's especially the butting of heads is immediate versus delayed and debated action. Whereas, when you're outside with all the walkers, immediate action matters. You have to take immediate action or you're dead. And then in an area like this, you can really sit and think about it. So I think it makes sense where their two styles of leadership come into play and why it is the way it is. But what I sort of, well, I guess not sort of relates to, but we're going to move on to Sasha Michonne and the girls' outing. And Rosita. So Sasha upset over Noah's death that had happened, as we find out, and essentially just trying to go blow off steam, but just feels like, again, this is something we see time and time again with Sasha. She just feels the need for revenge. And she's going out to take her revenge and try and mow everything down. This is what she talked about with Tyrese in the past, and it's something that she still is. She hasn't at all backed away from, or I don't know, she hasn't really taken that piece of Tyrese with her, as Glenn, you would say, Nando, you were saying takes pieces of the dead with him. She hasn't taken that with her from Tyrese of being a little calm and relaxed about things.
Well, I don't think it's just Tyrese in this case. I think Noah kind of set this one off more so because...
No, I mean, Noah's death set it off, but I'm saying that Tyrese still wouldn't have said, oh, why don't you go risk your life and just go out there and start hunting down walkers. That's my point, is that it's just a very opposite persona of what Tyrese would have done, and she didn't take any of Tyrese with her in this situation.
She didn't, but to her defense, I mean, she's lost 3 major people. She's lost her boyfriend/lover, she's lost her brother, and she's lost a friend. You know what I mean? In the matter of a short period of time. Tyrese, yes, he lost his girlfriend, and he cared about the sisters, the young sisters, but it's still different. She's lost like people who are really significant to her in her life on a day-to-day basis. So how does she maintain that?
Yeah, I think the thing is with Tyrese is he's gone inward. Yeah. And in a way he became a liability, being the gentle giant and not wanting to kill anybody. Yeah. He went inward, and Sasha just wants to lash out.
Yeah.
And do, she, a couple episodes ago when she was shooting those photos, she was like, come at me. Where are you guys? Come on at me.
Yeah.
She wants to feel pain.
Yeah.
Tyrese is too busy suffering. I mean, and they're both victims in their own way, but they just handle it incredibly differently.
Yeah. And as far as, and this is something that people have commented on the chat with how Sasha's acting too. I mean, it's not like she's the only one who lost everything. I mean, you have someone like a character like Maggie who literally lost her entire family.
She did.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't just a couple people; it's her entire family.
She's the last
right.
She's the last of the Greens.
But on the chat, we've got Bart Braswell saying, "Yo, Dale would have loved this community." I mean, somewhat. I mean, it does seem to be a community based on trying to have. Well, I was gonna say trying to have morals, but they don't when it comes to Pete. It's just because they don't really, because they're like, oh, let's just turn our head and like avoid. And everything is turn our head in this community.
Yeah, and also just kind of coming off of what you just said with Maggie, but Maggie still has Glenn.
No, that's true.
Sasha doesn't have anyone now.
That's true. That's a good point.
If Maggie lost Glenn, oh boy.
Yeah, she would be the same type of person.
I don't know if she'd be the same type, but she would definitely have nothing.
I think she would lose it.
Yeah.
I think she would lose it.
You think so? Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
I can see that too.
That's a good point. I mean, Sasha doesn't have her family or her lover, so it's just like nobody. But I mean, that lover was very short-lived. It was like...
Yeah. Maybe that was some good loving.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a long time.
1 week of this, you're hooked for life.
Yeah. In a zombie war, a little bit of something might be a whole lot of something.
Yeah, she needs a little bit of Beth's philosophy, I think. Beth was just like, I'll just have lovers left and right. It doesn't matter because I'm going to lose them anyways. Like, she just did not care at all. So, I liked what you came up with, Nando. I want to bring this up. Hashtag Carol Casserole.
Hashtag Carol Casserole. You did.
Smack it away. Burn the letter.
I didn't look. I'm guessing someone else might have put that up there, but when we're watching the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hashtag Carol Casserole.
I liked it.
Yeah. She should open up a casserole shop in Alexandria.
Speaking of people whose names sound like Carol, this is a great transition. Let's talk about Carl. Yeah.
Okay.
Feel those segues.
Okay.
Nice.
So Carl and Enid, we actually had people on the chat talking about that they wanted them to kiss in the moment inside. Did you guys think that was going to happen?
Yeah.
They're going to end up kissing?
I thought at least like a little feel of something or something, like a little touching somewhere. That was like the perfect moment for it to happen when you're a teenager. You're in a tree. Yeah. There's zombies around you.
I mean, it's literally love in the air. You hear,
It's love and decayed carcass in the air. Yeah.
You're listening to moaning all around you in surround sound.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't want to make out to that?
Yeah. It's like a love record.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, oh yeah, these are sweet tunes. Listen to Love Radio and we'll play nonstop moans.
All jokes aside, what I did like about this part with Carl is that I feel like we finally were able to see him really be a teenager and go through things that a normal teenager would go through versus what we've seen in the past with him always having to be more mature than what he is, especially, Rick looking to him for advice. This time we saw him as what he is, a teenager.
They had that slow motion shot of the two running together,
absolutely.
Which kind of, I think, was to show like, oh, we're having a good time. There's no cares, no worries right now. We're enjoying it.
Well, it's also going on what you were saying, Derrial. It's also that his awkwardness is like he doesn't. This is like we just see him as I'm a badass in the Walker world and I know how to handle myself. But then when it comes to this, which is something that he hasn't dealt with, which is a girl that he likes, he's very awkward and doesn't know how to handle himself and doesn't know how to make the first move, which is where he just awkwardly taps her hand and then backs away immediately, as opposed to like, I'm just gonna make the move.
Yeah.
So he's very timid about it because this is something that he doesn't know, and unlike the world out there, which he's really good at.
Yeah.
So it's
I also want to know,
for him.
does he and Rick have these conversations? Like, has Rick had the birds and bees conversation with him?
I don't
You know what I mean?
so.
Like, is there time for that?
Yeah, I don't know if there's time. I don't know. There was a long time that we haven't watched them just walking around and wandering, so maybe they've had some sit down. Son, come sit on my lap and I'll tell you a tale.
There was that time it seemed like he was smitten a little bit with Beth.
He definitely was. He definitely had a little crush on Beth.
But that was nothing. He was probably just still considered too young or something, or so he just thought it was an innocent little crush. But the other thing about Enid that I think is really important here is, they talked a little bit about it. I guess was it Ron? Is that the name of the other kid that they were hanging out with? That Ron.
Oh yeah, Ron.
Yeah, Ron and the other kids don't have a problem staying inside the walls playing video games or listening to their favorite bands. They have no problem doing that, but Enid doesn't want to forget.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that not forgetting. I mean, Sasha, they said try in Sasha, the title, trying to forget. And I believe try came into play again when with Enid and Carl. But it's something about that, and I think that's why she's more relatable to people like Carl and even the rest of our group, because she's not forgetting what's out there.
Yeah.
And she's purposely going out there to remember what it was. But she also says, this is their world, we just live in it, which I thought was a cool line.
I thought that's a great line. I think that was my favorite line of the episode. There were a couple really good lines, but I think that was my favorite line. Yeah. But the other thing, too, just on the whole teenager thing, I think part of it is when her and Carl are talking, Carl's asking her why she did it, and she's asking Carl why he did it. A lot of it, too, just feels like just that whole teenager thing of sneaking away and getting out and rebelling in a sense. So I think it's also that teenage rebellion going on a bit and just wanting to be free and get away from everyone else and express yourself, and that's kind of her way to do it.
And also
creepy Carl.
I think it's we haven't seen Rick interact with him or notice the fact, because Rick is so right now caught up in being the sheriff of the town, and also with what's going on with Jess, that we haven't seen him really notice the fact that Carl is being a teenager right now. I feel like they haven't really focused on that part either, so it'll be interesting to see what actually happens with that.
Absolutely.
And I don't want to forget this because I don't know where else in our recap we can bring this up again, but I think a lot of people thought that Enid might have been the one who saw Rick put the gun away.
Oh yeah. That's right.
It's a very small scene, but I think it's going to be really important to realize that she didn't have the gun. So,
absolutely.
There's still a lot of questions about Enid. I guess there were theories about her, meeting up with the exilers, the people who were exiled, or maybe something having to do with the wolves. But it's Nicholas.
It's also it's incredibly important. Yeah. I agree that Nicholas is the one with the gun. And also, to all you haters out there, during this panel, when I was saying that I thought this was going to be an important thing with the gun and Rick putting it away,
I was one of them that said no, it's not important.
It's one of those things where it's like, why else would you do that in a show? You have to have it.
I agree with you, Dave.
To all you haters,
Hater Nation.
I wasn't hating. I was just saying.
I feel like
I could be wrong.
The people who are just listening on iTunes have no idea
what we're talking about.
What I just did.
You guys have to watch the video to see what we're doing.
They're pointing to me.
Watch the video to watch that one interaction.
Yes.
So,
That's
Did I? Oh, okay.
Pushed him out a little bit.
I missed.
You creep me out. You creep me out, Dave.
I know. It's like creepy Carl. That's another hashtag. Hashtag creepy Carl.
Carl, Carol's Casseroles, a lot of C's.
Carol's Casseroles, yeah. That's you're right. All those start with C. This is the episode of C's.
I'm right about that.
All right, so let's move on to what a lot of you guys in the chat are bringing up right now, which is Jonathan Garcia asking who tied that girl in the tree. So Aaron and Daryl's scene.
And then we saw the W.
Yeah, the W on it. So we have this new group, which, Nando, you made a great point about this group and how we find the walkers. And I'll go ahead and let you bring that up.
Look, I mean, this has been something I think that's been really littered throughout the second half of this season, but we haven't really gone into too much detail with. From the episode when we were at Noah's town and we saw all those dismembered bodies.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we definitely saw a dismembered walker. I'm guessing that looked like it was more of a walker than a human being. We've seen that. We were talking a lot about the walker that we saw with the W a couple of weeks ago. So we're seeing these little bits and pieces, and now it seems like. And also, not to forget that that same episode in Noah's town, they said there was that writing on the wall that said wolves are near or wolves aren't far.
Wolves aren't far. Yeah,
wolves aren't far, which kind of for some reason makes me think of Bad Wolf from Doctor Who, like the little wolf references. But and then the book reference that some people brought up in Alexandria, that there was a wolf comic book. So yeah, I think we were coming to a head with this, and it's pretty creepy, especially when we saw the dismembered bodies. And then to see that woman tied up.
Right, which has got to be someone from their group who they'd exiled. So it's not just...
Do you think so? Do you think it's an exiler?
Well, I mean, it's not just an I think it's like an exile. It's someone from their group that they decided to exile and be murdered. It's like doing what Rick did. Doing what Rick decided, where we need to take care of someone in our group, but let's tie them to a tree and make a point of it.
Okay, I just wondered because I feel like the wolves might have been responsible for. I'm just guessing the wolves might have been responsible for what happened in Noah's town.
Oh, I think you're 100% correct.
So I don't think that people that are being exiled are the same as the wolves. So it's a question of who did this atrocity.
So basically, you think that this group just found or they ran into some random person and were like, let's rape her maybe or something like that, and then just tie her to a tree and leave her.
Yeah, I don't know where we got raped from, but yeah, sure.
I threw that in myself.
We definitely took to a different sexual level.
I did not see a rape kit.
I did not have sexual relations.
Look, I threw that in there because to me it's like, why else would the group do that? I mean, like, that's just something you see in this world. I think, like, in this world, that's something that you can see happening.
I will say all of that stuff that seemed to be happening.
Maybe I'm just that ready for Game of Thrones that it's in my that type of stuff's in my mind because that's very common in Game of Thrones. But I mean,
it was very Criminal Minds or like very Hannibal or True Detective.
It's not that. It's just one of those unfortunate things about society, and not society, but like uncivilized society. And back when you had things like medieval times and stuff like that, rape was incredibly common back then, which it was just something that happened. And then when like there were wars, people would come and when they would win, they would rape all the girls. A lot of times that would happen. It's just what happened. It's history. So I mean, so I'm not. The point is, this is history. You're the one who's.
Was she fully undressed?
Nando, you are the one who's.
I don't remember being.
You are the one who's awkward about something that happens. This is something that happens in real life. So it's obviously something that might happen in the show.
Okay.
So I bring up that that's probably what they did if it wasn't someone in their group.
I would say whatever this is, whether it includes rape or not, is definitely sick. I would say this is sicker than what we saw Garrett do with cannibalism, because this is like demented, like almost like.
But was she fully undressed? I don't remember.
She looked like she was.
She looked like she was.
I mean, take it like this though, with how demented it is. I mean, obviously we don't know about the rape thing, but that was just an idea of what they might have done. But like, here's the thing: you take off someone's clothes, tie them to a tree, and then you just leave and know that something bad is going to happen. Right. I mean, obviously they had to chisel the W in her head, but then, or you literally cook someone alive and eat them and laugh in their face. So I'd say that cooking someone alive and eating and laughing in their face is a little more brutal.
Okay. That's pretty sick too.
I think. Yeah, I mean, yeah, because.
But you know what? But the eating,
you're toying with your victim.
I'm not just.
Food.
I'm not. Well, that other than the toying with, but I felt that was more of a revenge tactic. Other than that, you know, Garrett's justification or that group's justification is that's the only way they could stay alive, by eating other humans. What this group is doing seems like malicious, almost for fun. I don't know what kind of message they're trying to send, but that's not to justify cannibalism. And you guys feel free to disagree with me.
I love cannibalism. I totally disagree.
No, I mean, just feel free to disagree that I think that this group, whatever this group is definitely the stakes are higher. It's worse. Dismembering people.
Well, but here's my thing also with this group that we don't know about yet. They're still so close to the other camps. You know what I mean? Like, I feel it's no one else is seeing them. You know what I mean? They're seeing, like, they're really close to where everything is. So why hasn't anyone else seen them kind of in their activities? You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's fair enough. Nobody seems to know about. Well, the people in Alexandria are just dumb. They just don't look outside their walls. I mean, that's part of the whole.
Yeah, but there's always someone in the watchtowers and looking across things. Like there
wasn't. There wasn't before. Remember?
Oh, that's Sasha, true. You're right.
They've just been pretty much. They've just pretty much been oblivious. Other than Aiden and Nicholas going out and getting their people killed. Yeah. They've been pretty much oblivious outside the walls.
You're right.
So.
Well, I mean, a lot of the groups we've seen that we know have run into them are just dead already. So it could just be the case of.
Although Aaron doesn't even know, and Aaron's the one that goes out and does all the trips.
That's true.
Interesting.
But you have to wonder how far out he really explores, because we don't know that yet. But I mean, Noah's group was pretty far away, like Noah's town, compared to Aaron. It took them a while to get to where Aaron was. But I think, that's a good point. But I guess we just don't know how far they've really even looked outside of their walls, because they are pretty content to just stay as close as possible.
And this is creepy considering there's one episode left. I mean, we could definitely talk about that toward predictions. But one episode left, and really, Aaron and Derrial have had nothing to do with everything else that's going on with Alexandria right now.
Yeah.
They're we don't know how far away they are. We've seen other people outside of the walls, but we're just assuming they're someplace a lot farther away.
I mean, I assume that they're relatively near, but not too far. But I don't know.
Probably not close enough for anyone else to rescue them if something was to happen.
But as far as we know, it could just be the case of the wolves are just getting closer, and it's something where maybe they just hadn't gotten here yet. Maybe they are on the prowl, and they started from location A, and they're just moving. So that's why Alexandria hasn't run into them yet. And perhaps that'll be a next week thing. But Andrew Schneider on the chat asking, has Deanna exiled anybody before? And I believe they have.
The three people that she mentioned.
The three people.
Right, the three people. So,
that she mentioned in her first episode, I think, when we were introduced to her.
Yeah. But yeah, it's also another thing with this whole thing with Aaron and Derrial too, is it just shows just how good Daryl's instincts are, where he immediately knows and notices that there's a person where they are and can tell exactly how long the person's been dead, like how recent it was.
She looked pretty pink. Yeah, that's why you thought that was one thing. Her skin tone.
She looked fresh,
very, very fresh. Yeah.
Totally fresh. But I do think, I don't know, to me, I think that this is something where the group's getting closer. And for what you were asking, Nando, is this group going to be worse than the cannibals? I think they're going to be more brutal, especially when you have to keep on going somewhere with the show. And it's like, how can we make a group that's even more brutal and insane and all that? So probably going to be.
Well, I would assume they would raise the stakes, Yeah. So.
Definitely. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the meat of the episode, the Rictatorship.
No pink references.
The
pink.
I like it pretty rare, my meat. How about that?
Yeah, there we go.
Super rare. I'm done now. I'm done.
It's okay.
I'm done. All right, so the Rictatorship, which is, again, everything we talked about with, especially at the beginning with Deanna and where she's at in her mindset, is incredibly important to how this all culminates. You also have to wonder if Deanna would have been in a different frame of mind had Gabriel not talked to her, had her son not just died, if she would have been more willing to listen and talk with Rick when Rick first confronted her about Pete and brought up how it was a problem. But Rick finding out now from Carol that Sam, and we get this in the beginning, Sam going to Carol and confessing that 100% it is that Jesse is being beaten by Pete. So that is happening. She gets the confession from Sam, and that Sam has to hide away and tells this to Rick. So Rick goes to confront Deanna about this, who's the leader, and let her know what's going on. And Deanna, again, doing the group mantra, and for exactly what we discussed, which is, look, this is our town's doctor. There's nothing we can do because we need a doctor. which is absolutely the conundrum in this situation. You need a doctor, and it's like, what do you do in this situation? And
I feel like we've seen this before, back in the hospital with the cops. The dilemma there was that they needed a police force, so no one could really revolt because the police force was protecting them. In this case, and even the doctor there couldn't do anything.
Yep.
But in this case, it's the opposite now. It's like the surgeon's got them in a bind because he's their only medical person, I guess, that can really treat serious injuries. And I find that interesting too, considering how wimpy this group is, and they don't really go out too often. It's like paying for medical insurance that you never use. I feel like it's like this is a rare case where Tara is in need of surgical help. This is more Rick's dilemma right now, but Deanna's busy, weighing this as he's an important position to this community. How can this community grow without a doctor? So I found that interesting. But anyway, sorry, I digressed.
No,
it's okay.
I mean, it's vital, the whole doctor situation, because, I mean, it's also like, as we were talking about too, Tara is injured, and it could be the case, and then we find out that Tara is with Pete, because Jesse brings that up, and that Pete's going to make Tara all better, and it's all going to be on Pete, so... I mean, this is 100% vital, and then it really does bring up that question that was asked by Deanna, which is, what do you do? And Rick's like, you force them to be separate, and it's like, well, then Pete does what if he's not allowed to be with Jesse? Like, what happens then? And she's really trying to protect Pete because it's such a vital person to have, and have that doctor, and it really is that he has them in a vice grip.
Absolutely,
he's 100% needed.
He's a key player on the team,
right?
And and that's where it goes back to Deanna's dilemma. You know what I mean? I think that she knows and feels all the things that are supposed to be right, or who's supposed to be gone or exiled, but Pete's a perfect example. You can't, because when people are injured, who's gonna help them? There's no one else there. And I think that's her dilemma with her decision making, where it's like, okay, outside of the fact that Rick did look extremely crazy in his with the blood on his head and the speeches going on. I mean, he looked. I would have second guessed maybe what he said at that moment too. He went into that Rick zone.
Well, before we jump into that ending part, I mean, I think it's important because you said this when we were watching it, and I agree. When Rick told Deanna, when she said, "What happens if we can't control Pete? What if he doesn't want to listen when we separate him?" He's like, well, let's just kill him.
Yeah.
And I
was
feel
surprised he said that.
I'm surprised he said that too to begin with, that he would actually go out and say that. That's very, it's not that it's very unlike him. I mean, we see him totally reacting, that way based on other things that's happened, but this is for domestic abuse, and this is, he's a sheriff of a town. Like, he's not even thinking incarcerate them. I mean, even what Deanna says in that sense, exile him, kind of makes sense, but knowing Rick, I'm sure he was thinking about the governor, and when the governor went away, he came back, and Herschel ended up dying. Right,
and I was going to say, it really does bring that question, too, of what do you do in this world when exile seems like a better choice, or execution, and it's just exile versus execution in a world like this, where it 100%, as you said, Nando, Rick's choice is, look, you exile someone, and they know where your safe place is, and they could come back with more people, and that's going to be way worse.
Well, I don't know if Pete could do that, but of course, I'm sure he's thinking that.
I don't think he could either, but I think that is exactly what Rick's idea is. But just in general, too, I mean, we don't know who she exiled before, and it's like, what if the 3 people she exiled before are actually the people with the wolves, and the wolves are bringing them, and those 3 people are bringing the wolves here to this place, to Alexandria? I mean, it's that question of, like, you don't know what those people who you exile are going to do, but the people who you execute, damn well what they're going to say and what they're going to do. So Rick is on the side of execution here, and just the fact of that's how things are now.
And I was saying that if he did, like when they had that big draw-out fight, I was like, okay, if Pete dies, my prediction would be that Tara dies too, because I feel like her life stands in the balance.
Well, and also my point back to saying with the point of Rick saying the statement about killing Pete is that obviously he and Carol have been very detailed and smart about how they are perceived. We have Carol, who's looking like Betty Crocker homemaker, when we know she's like an assassin,
sweaters.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the fact that it's almost like he let himself go. It's like he let the real Rick come out, which is cool, but not in front of them. You know what I mean? Because then it's like it's defeating all of what they're secretly trying to accomplish in the community.
Two things though, going back on the whole exile or execute thing. A point I want to bring up that I think also matters when you consider that is Rick exiled Carol as opposed to executing her, and that was an example where it was someone in their community who they already knew, and he did that, and it came back to save them.
Yeah.
And that ended up being the right decision, because if he just executed her for what she did, then the whole town then all of them might have been eaten by the cannibals or killed by,
But Rick did. That's a great point. And Rick did torment himself over this, and he talked to Carol, and he heard Carol's side, and I think because Carol earned his, he was with the group for so long, and she earned his respect.
Showed his respect, yeah.
That I think he allowed that to happen. There was a big building of trust there. I think he felt he was giving her a just reward. But we also have to not forget that Rick is demented over this whole Jesse thing. I mean, obviously he's not thinking clearly, and I mean, I think the question is, do you agree with Rick or do you agree with Deanna in this whole thing?
And actually, speaking of which, that's kind of why I brought up was Jonathan Garcia asking, Antoine Wilson asking all of us here, would you rather exile or kill? So what our thoughts are on in this world specifically.
I mean, honestly, I feel like if you exile Pete, he's gonna die. He's not. I don't feel like he's a survivor. You know what I mean? Like we haven't seen him be able to fight, or outside of punching Rick, but he wouldn't survive. You know what I mean?
I don't know. I feel
so. You choose exile. I mean, this isn't just Pete.
I wouldn't.
I'm saying, which rule do you go with?
I would exile him.
In general, though. In general, which rule do you go with?
With everyone or just with him?
Period. What's your rule? You have a town.
I think it's exile. I wouldn't kill.
You run Alexandria. Okay, you go exile.
Yeah. I think with everyone, if you're doing a blanket thing, I guess I would go exile over execute, just because what execute turns people into. I think. And I think, even with the whole, I'll bring up the broken window theory from last week, which someone notably told us is a real police thing, which I think is cool. I mean, the thing I was saying is last week was there's a difference between that theory being part of a good police force, and protecting everyone by getting all the little things and cleaning them up. There's a difference between a police doing that and a police state. And I think that's what Rick is turning into. The dictatorship, the police state, exile, killing people for these infractions. I think that's huge. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I could, I go case by case basis, because I think sometimes
you didn't give us that option.
No. I'm saying hold on. You didn't let me finish. I said if I could, I go case by case. But since this is a full on blanket statement, I would probably go exile as well.
Okay,
so I'd agree with you guys. Okay. See, I was starting with that to go to okay, look, here's if you had the blanket statement, we go to exile.
Okay.
But my whole point is I get the point of needing to execute someone, and Rick's. I get it in this world.
Yeah.
So. Anyways,
but Rick's speech,
against Jesse, or to everyone with his blood on his face.
Both of them, really, because they both were about the same. I mean, Rick telling Jesse you got to fight to live, and you can't just wish for things to happen, which I think is what Deanna's kind of doing, at being a bureaucrat. She's deliberating a little too long on things, and then his whole crazy blood-soaked, battle with when he pulls the gun out and he gets all gangster, turning the gun while he's pointing it out.
He was real gangster with that.
He was real thug. That was brutal.
Yeah,
he got a real hood in that scene, definitely.
Oh yeah, cocking that gun sideways. Yeah,
and then it was funny too, because we kept seeing the statement of "Why do you care?" That came up several times.
Oh yeah,
why do you care?
Yeah.
Jesse said it to Rick. We also heard it in another part of the scene. Carol to Rick. Why do you care? And it was interesting to hear people's viewpoint on why they felt like they needed to do what they needed to do.
And Jesse even said, "Would you do this for anyone else?"
Right.
And Rick said no.
No, he said no.
Yeah. So it's just obvious. He's just, he's a little too involved.
Yeah.
He's a little too involved with this situation personally.
Yeah, because usually he's able to just put the blinders on when it comes to that and do true enforcing and all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do think he said.
He's not wrong at the end of the day. That at least for Jesse, and what he's saying is just Jesse needs to do something, because it's not going to change. It'll always be like this.
The one thing Rick said in his speech that I kind of disagree with.
Yeah.
Well, he said, you have to live in a real world. We have to control who lives here. And that's when Deanna said, yes, we do, meaning him.
Right.
And then he said, your way is going to get people killed. And while I agree with that up to a point, I mean, you have to remember, if you're looking at it from the Alexandria side, they've been around this whole time, and somehow Rick's group has gone through so much. It doesn't look like Alexandria has suffered. That's why they're so oblivious to the world outside of them. So for someone to come in here, where everything's been more or less okay, they had to exile a few people, and a few people died. They don't know how they died on a run. Other than that, for someone to come in here and say, your way is so screwed up, that must also be something that really, if I was Deanna or one of the residents there going, what are you talking about?
Well, let me ask you guys this. Do you think that Rick and his team should stay there or should they leave? Because it's almost becoming, to me, it's too much trouble. They're safe behind the gates temporarily, but the way that they're all implementing the process, eventually it's going to be destructive.
It's almost like the governor taking over trying to take over the prison. It's almost like that. I think they turned into that group.
Well, to an extent. They're trying to change it and how it's run, but for the most part, things like Abraham taking charge and things like that and Glenn taking charge. It really is. They need to take charge of the places where they should take charge, which is outside of the wall. Yeah. And it seems like within the wall, Deanna knows how to handle things a little bit better. So it really just depends on which side of the wall you're on, and you kind of need a little bit of both, which is why Deanna probably wanted the group.
Yeah, but my thing is, if you take Rick away from this, that takes away Glenn, that takes away Abraham.
Well, if they choose to follow Rick,
the only one I would question is Abraham, which I don't even really question that, but that would be the only one I would question.
A. Martina is saying, why is Rick so drawn to Jesse? They just met. Love at first sight, baby.
She reminds him of ex-wifey, I think.
You reminds him of
Lori?
Lori, and also there's a tinge of Carol in there too.
So this might not be. I don't know. Like, what was your guys' interpretation on the red balloon outside of obviously when it went floating away? That was when shit had gone down and it was over. But I think
the red balloon.
The red balloon being attached to the toy and all of that.
It was just this glaring thing that sticks out, and then it going away. It's like, okay, now it's out in the open. It was kind of like hidden in sight, and now it's out in the open.
The red, the balloon is burst.
Right, just the whole hidden in plain sight allegory. All right, so with that said, though, it ends with Michonne knocking Rick the funk out. So that's because she's, even though she misses her old self and she thinks that's a part of who she needs to be, she still wants to, it seems like, make this work, or at least put the group in a good light. It had to be someone from the group for it not to affect the whole group. So it's a good thing Michonne did it. Mm-hmm. But let's go ahead and go to some news and gossip, because Nando, you got a bunch for us.
Yeah, I do.
AFTERBUZZ TV News.
Okay, let's talk about Norman Reedus for a second, and let's get. We have a photo of him that was released recently.
That was just dropped.
And that was dropped, and look at him here. For those of you who are not on YouTube looking at this, he's holding a cat, and he's got his shirt Cruelty Free International. He's representing that group, and they're against animal testing, and he's one of many celebrities speaking out against cruelties to animals, including Sir Paul McCartney and a bunch of people from The Big Bang Theory and Ricky Gervais. So really good group there. But there he is, really attractive. I just put that story for Alexis.
Really attractive.
For Alexis. So I put that story for Alexis.
Why is his finger in the cat's butt? I'm just asking.
Why are you going there?
I'm just asking.
Cruelty is free.
It's not cruel. It's not cruel. The cat likes it.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nando.
You are welcome. What's our next story? Our next story is Mankiller? Or no, our next story is the 8-bit. Oh yeah, Mankiller. Let's do that. So Gail Ann Hurd, who I believe is on the Talking Dead, so who knows? She might even brought this up on Talking Dead. She's doing a Kickstarter campaign for a documentary on the first Cherokee chief, I believe. Her name is Wilma Mankiller. Very interesting last name. And if you go to her Kickstarter page, if you look on Kickstarter for Gail Ann Hurd and Mankiller, that's going to be the name of the documentary. She's working on that with Valerie Redbird, I believe. Forgive me for not getting her name, but she's working with someone else to produce it. And if you go to Kickstarter and you help back it up, they're trying to raise $150,000 in the next week and a half. They've already gone halfway to their goal, but there are a lot. First of all, Denai Guerrera, Steve Yeun, and Herschel himself, Scott Wilson, are all on the video for the Kickstarter to promote this documentary, try and raise money for this documentary.
Valerie Red Horse.
And Valerie Red Horse, thank you. It was Red Horse, not Redbird. And if you go on, there's a bunch of Walking Dead prizes that you can get if you donate money. So, like for $30, as little as $30, you can receive an officially licensed Walking Dead T-shirt. For $30, which is what a T-shirt's about $25 or something. You can definitely get that. There's a bunch of stuff here. I believe there's a day to hang out to get a spaghetti dinner with Scott Walker.
So if you like spaghetti,
right? Copy of The Walking Dead score signed by Bear McCreary for $40, and there's a bunch of other stuff. There's a lot of stuff in here. An issue of The Walking Dead comic book signed by Robert Kirkman for $65 or more. There's a lot. And if you want to go to the, I'll just go to the big one. The big one at the end for $10,000, you can receive one ticket to the season premiere of The Walking Dead in October. You get to sit in Gail Ann Hurd's row at the screening and attend the exclusive after party. Travel and accommodations are not included, so you'd have to do that. But there's also stuff for tickets to a live taping of Talking Dead, and again, I think stuff with Steve Yeun too, and Denai. That's why they're all in there, and Melissa McBride. So a lot of good stuff. And then lastly. So this came out on the internet this week by Cinefix, I believe. Here we go. Press start. Walking Dead. An 8-bit
I want to press start to go.
This is so awesome.
I like the 8-bit chiptune too.
Yeah, it's an 8-bit recap of seasons 1 and 2. It's 4 minutes long.
This is fantastic.
It was just released on YouTube this past week, and it's seasons 1 and 2. So if you have any friends who don't know what happened in season 1 to 2, you can just show them the 8-bit version.
It's Biker Chick and Morgan.
For those of you watching on YouTube.
Oh, and everyone on the chat talking about, I think Morgan's going to maybe show up next week. Here he is right here. We see him here.
But, if we see him right there. But anyway, so they're saying that they will release the next video, which is seasons 3 and 4, if they get over 100,000 views on YouTube, which they already have. But they'll release it tomorrow if 8-bit Walking Dead, hashtag 8-bit Walking Dead trends. So they're running away. And
man, they got a good 8-bit artist. Whoever did that
really
for them.
Awesome. Anyway, I recommend you guys look at it. I'll try and put it up on YouTube after the show so you guys can find a link, but I'm sure you can find it pretty easy. And that's news and gossip.
So, real quick from the chat, Bart Braswell saying, I hope Gabriel dies. See what his God does then.
Me too.
See what his God does then. And Antoine Wilson saying, Gabriel's God will be Lucifer when he meets him, Bart. I just thought that was a fun exchange. So, let's go to the predictions.
Yeah.
Predictions.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
So we know that Rick's on the chart or track to get exiled, but if I had to predict anything happening, I think that the W group is going to end up showing up, and then if either they're going to need Rick or it's going to completely change all of their plans, or maybe Rick has just left and they're like, I think that it's going to intersect in some way.
Yeah, I mean, well, this is the season finale, so I feel like, we're going to definitely see something. And as was teased by Norman Reedus a couple of weeks ago when he was, I think, on ET, he said, you're going to want to kick your TV or yell at your TV, and you're going to want a Kleenex. So it's probably going to be a death. I know the rumors, there have been rumors as to who it's going to be. I'm going to leave it out of it.
Yeah, a lot of people in here is saying like, oh my God, it's going to be Derrial. He's going to die next week.
People are afraid it's going to be him. And then we haven't seen Morgan, like you said. A lot of people talking about Morgan. Nicholas and the Gun, I think, is going to play out next week.
Yeah, definitely.
As well.
It's definitely going to.
What do you think?
I actually think we're going to lose Sasha. I think it's a build up to. I think it would be devastating because of the loss that she's experienced in the last couple episodes or this season, and then to lose her as well.
So I feel like if it's going to be one of those things where if it really is like you need to draw out the Kleenex, it's got to be someone from the core group. And when I say core group, I mean since we've had since like season 1 or 2.
Someone who we're really attached to.
Really core.
Do you think Nicholas is going to kill anybody with that gun? That's a good question too. Actually,
I don't know. I want Nicholas to die just like I want Gabriel to die.
Yeah, I mean, like I'd be more upset if Michonne died than Sasha. It's like because she's to me is more core.
I just can't see
core. I don't think she's going to either. I don't think she is. So if you had to guess one person to die, I know we got to wrap up, but one person, would you guess?
I'm still going with Sasha.
God, I don't want to say it. Derrial. I don't want to say it. I just said it.
You think it's going to be Derrial?
I think it might.
Okay.
I'm scared saying that. Please don't yell at me.
Yeah, I might go with Derrial too, just because of the whole Norman Reedus Kleenex thing. But I mean, there's nothing that's led up to him dying. That's the weird thing. It's like there's literally nothing, no indicator.
Would be the typical Walking Dead formula.
Well, I mean, the typical formula is let's give you an episode where you grow to really like them and they evolve, and then we kill them.
I don't want to be right. I'm just saying that for the record. I do not want to be right. So I hope I'm not.
So, all right. Thank you guys for joining us this week on this week's Walking Dead After Show. Once again, I'm Dave Klein. You can find me on Twitter at @TheDaveKlein. That is Klein. Additionally, I'll be doing a quick 5-minute wrap-up for Skybound on YouTube of Walking Dead, which should be out if you're watching this Monday tonight, I believe. So definitely check that out as well. It's 5 minutes, fun wrap-up.
Cool.
Skybound on YouTube.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Nandovel, Nandovel. You can also find me here at AfterBuzz for a lot of other shows, including The Blacklist and Bates Motel, Survivor, and Scorpion.
Damn, when do you have time to sleep? You can find me at Derrial Christon. I know, right? On Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and also on our sister company, Black Hollywood Live. Check us out, all of our programming there as well.
He doesn't charge you that.
All right, and we will see you guys next week for the big finale. Later, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.